Hi guys, welcome to the Meet Musings podcast.
The show where we talk about different issues and disabilities that affect people emotionally, psychologically, physically, and mentally. And we discuss health and well being generally. We are amplifying the voices of people living with disabilities and limitations and breaking the stigmas.
Today, we start our new season on another issue, illness or limitation that is difficult to experience, but even more difficult to deal with as a lot of people, including friends, relatives, and even some doctors in some parts of the world, do not understand the complexities of this illness. Sometimes, medical practitioners fail in their duty of care to patients with this illness just because they haven't got sufficient exposure, knowledge, training, equipment, medical facilities, and in depth understanding required to manage this condition. Um, this illness is sickle cell anemia or sickle cell disease. Some medical doctors will go online in front of patients to source for information. Rather than look for markers, patients are often subjected to long waiting times before they can access time critical treatments. The illness is prevalent in people of African origin, and I see a lot of people talk about sickle cell sufferers like we are not human beings. They talk about us in such a degrading way without respect to our feelings. This needs to change, and I want to use this medium to create an awareness on the sickle cell disease and issues that patients and sickle cell sufferers face. I have seen a blog shared by someone on Facebook where she referred to any ill-looking child as one with sickle cell. It breaks my heart every time I read such posts. Please start treating us with some respect as other people. In our world, people with cancer are treated with so much respect because they are seen to be going through so much stress. The truth is, sickle cell has just as much severity. In African environments, people living with sickle cell are oftentimes castigated and subjected to physical torture by
Some
religious leaders, where they are referred to as Emiri or Ogwanje. That's a child that's destined to die. And sometimes even parents abandon the child for one parent who has to shoulder the responsibility for both parents. That is not acceptable. Having sickle cell is not as a result of any action or non-action on the part of the sufferer or carrier of the sickle cell trait, but as a result of genes they have inherited from their parents. Sickle cell disease is a group of blood disorders typically inherited from a person's parents. The hemoglobin S gene, also known as sickle cell gene, altered, defected, imperfect hemoglobin, red blood cells, is passed on when both parents carry the S gene mutation and then pass the S gene on to their child. If one parent has the S gene, each child has 25% chances of inheriting the two defected genes and suffer from sickle cell disease, or 50% risk of inheriting one defected gene and developing a sickle cell disease trait, or a 25% chance of inheriting two normal genes and be unaffected by the genetic mutation and disease. I happen to have been fortunate enough to inherit the dreaded trait from my parents, and as a result, I've gone through various forms of other complications. But if I were to be given the chances again, I would choose those parents over and over and over again because they were simply the best parents anyone could ever have. Yes, sickle cell is a life-threatening condition. There is no cure for most people with sickle cell anemia, with stem cell or bone marrow transplants being the only cure available for sickle cell disease. But that is not done often enough because of the complexities and significant risk involved. So it is quite scary. One of the reasons why it's quite scary because of the difference in our stem cells as opposed to other people. Instead of having flexible and round shaped stem cells or red blood cells that can easily move through blood vessels present in regular people, patients with sickle cell anemia have red blood cells shaped like sickles or crescent moons, which are often rigid, and any movement of these irregularly shaped cells causes them to get stuck in small blood vessels. This can also result in slowing down of oxygen supply or cause a complete blockage of blood flow to other parts of the body. The second reason why it is scary is because red blood cells in other people survive for 120 days before they need to be replaced. The red cells in patients with sickle cells only live for 10 to 20 days, leaving a shortage of red blood cells, and this condition is known as anemia. I will explain the process of formation of red cells.
So you can get a better understanding.
The red cell formation process starts when the oxygen level in the blood becomes low, either as a result of loss of oxygen, blood loss, presence in high altitude, exercise, bone marrow damage, and low hemoglobin levels. When the kidneys detect low oxygen levels, they produce and release a hormone which then stimulates the production of red blood cells from the red bone marrow. As more red blood cells enter blood circulation, oxygen levels in the blood and tissues increase. When the kidneys senses the increase in the oxygen levels in the blood, they slow down the release of erythropoietin. As a result, red blood cell production decreases.
I know this is quite difficult to assimilate, but
Compare this to a car engine which needs gas or diesel or fuel to work. And when the level of gas drops, it starts signaling on the car dashboard. And if you ignore the indication of the low gas on your car dashboard and go ahead to drive the car without refueling, then the car stops. That's the same way the red blood cells function in sickle cell patients. Since the main function of the red blood cells in the body is to transport oxygen to body cells and deliver carbon dioxide to the lungs. But due to the abnormality in the shape of the oxygen carrying protein hemoglobin found in the red cells in people living with sickle cell conditions, we experience episodes of pain called crises. Pain develops when our sickle-shaped red blood cells tries to force movement of blood through the tiny blood vessels to our chest, to our abdomen and joints. The sickle cell sufferer therefore experiences pain in any part of the body, including our chest, joints, and even in the bones and every part of the body. In our next episode, I will be talking about the peculiarities in people living with sickle cell anemia. Thank you for listening. Keep sharing this, keep downloading, and keep subscribing to our channels. We are still available on Spotify, Podbean, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast,
Amazon Podcast,
TuneIn on Alexa, Stitcher, Deezer, Pocket Cast, Overcast, Tumblr, Twitter, Listen Notes, Breaker, Radio Public,
YouTube, Facebook. We're also available on iHeartRadio. Just search for the Meet Muses podcast on any of the social media platforms.
and hope to return with more informative episodes.